How's it going, everybody? Thank you for joining in. I'm your host, Micah Coate. Join us every week or two as we continue to draw closer to the Lord through stories, historical figures, Bible studies, and more. You can check out more information by going to our website, salvationandstuff.com or salvationandstuff.simplecast.com. If there was ever a time to discuss faith and politics, those two things that we never discuss, but if there was a time to discuss those two things with cheerful hearts with those who are close to us during the holidays, may it be this Thanksgiving. But instead of looking to today's politicians, let us first learn from those in the past about how Thanksgiving became a national holiday and how we should each personally be involved in this celebration of God's goodness and grace. Let's get it going. Episode 18 starts now. In what is now rare political form, both houses of Congress once agreed on something historic, and it was actually of good nature. What was it? They requested the president to implore the nation to separate a special day of the year to give thanks to God for his many blessings, in particular the gift of being a sovereign and free nation with a constitutional government elected by and for its citizens. So on October 3rd, 1789, that's just 13 years after the Declaration of Independence was written and 1 year after the Constitution was ratified, President George Washington wrote the short 469-word proclamation and instituted the holiday that we now call Thanksgiving. A few things must be noted and indeed cannot be overlooked. The proclamation was all about the greatness of God, asking for forgiveness and bestowing our many blessings to others. Three things. The proclamation was all about the greatness of God, asking for forgiveness, and bestowing our many blessings to others. So it's very clear that God is at the center of the proclamation. He was described by Washington as, quote, the Almighty God, the great and glorious being, or the beneficent author, and the great Lord and ruler of nations. Secondly, Washington gives witness to the goodness of God. He was, quote, the beneficent author of all the good that was, that is, or that will be, end quote. Thanksgiving was to be humbly made to God, not just for the freedom to gorge ourselves on fattened bites of tryptophan turkey and watch football all day long, but Thanksgiving was to be made for what George Washington quotes, his many signal favors and his manifold mercies and the favorable interpositions of his providence. That specifically that led the United States to an opportunity peaceably to establish a form of government for our own safety and happiness, end quote. So we must remember that the pleasure we have from feasting with friends and family on Thanksgiving is only possible from a government that pursues its people's happiness and safety. Odd as it may seem, one way to celebrate our freedom and happiness is to confess sin. And Washington asked us as a nation to beseech God to, quote, to pardon our national and other transgressions, end quote. So there's a lot that can be said about this, but it should be sufficient just to wonder how good it would be to have a federal government acknowledge their fallen state by imploring God to forgive both their personal and national transgressions. Lastly, Washington wanted the many blessings that the United States enjoyed, like virtue, faith, and science, to be given to others. Today, in a time where science and religion are falsely pitted against each other, Washington reminds us that there is no gulf between them. And in a time where we selfishly want to hold on to everything that we have, Washington reminds us to give them out to others. He ends the proclamation hoping, quote, that our national government would be a blessing to all the people by constantly being a government of wise, just, and constitutional laws, discreetly and faithfully executed and obeyed to protect and guide all sovereigns and nations, and to bless them with good government, peace, and concord. He continues by saying that he hopes that God will promote the knowledge and practice of true religion and virtue, and the increase of science among them and us, and generally to grant unto all mankind such a degree of temporal prosperity as he alone knows to be best. So even though our senses might be slightly dulled from overconsumption this Thanksgiving, may we not forget to raise a glass to give true thanks to God for our nation, our prosperity, and the many freedoms that we share. May we consider our own faults as individuals and as a country and seek pardon from God, all while seeking to be a blessing both to our neighbors and to strangers. Thank you again for listening, and have a great Thanksgiving. Take care, and I hope you will join us next week.